on Twitter. For our first segment, I'd like to welcome the mayor of Hoboken, Bhalla, who's joining us from Hoboken, New Jersey. Welcome, Mayor.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So obviously, everyone had plans and then COVID-19 hits. Talk a little bit about how Hoboken was approaching transit in general and what's shifted with COVID-19 and how that's affected the way that you plan for people getting around your city.
Sure. Well, Hoboken is we call it the mile square city. It's literally about 1.23 square miles. And so it also has a population of about 55,000 people. So we are the fifth most densely populated city in the country. So mobility and transportation in a densely populated city is critical. So we've been thinking about these issues even pre-COVID. We have test-driven e-scooters for a period of time in 2019. We have a bike share program currently. We are ramping up that bike share program to better technology, more efficient means of micromobility for that first and last mile. And that policy initiative has become all the more important in the context of COVID-19, where you face real health risks that are associated with what we're used to, which is mass transit. Hoboken has the highest population of residents who rely upon mass transit to commute to and from work every day in the country. So in the country, we have the highest population or percentage of residents who rely upon mass transit. That creates a real challenge for us, and we're looking at innovative ways to address those challenges.
Because in general, cities had been trying to build towards a future less reliant on cars. Obviously, as you mentioned, Hoboken has a very large percentage that were already reliant on mass trans. But then all of a sudden COVID hits, and the safest way everyone tells us is to get in your car. Now, that's not necessarily a reality for a lot of citizens in Hoboken who probably don't have cars to begin with. One of the things you mentioned that Hoboken did is really beef up the bike portion. And you had a city bike or a bike sharing alternative before, but it wasn't connected. One of the big steps you've taken recently is to connect with the system that's used in Jersey City and Manhattan. Why is that important?
Well, it's important because we want to make sure that there's connectivity between municipalities within our immediate radius. So we initially had a company that operated several years ago. They're still operating, but our neighbors to the south, Jersey City, and our neighbors just to the east, New York City, were utilizing the services of City Bike. And that created a disconnect between the product that we were using, which is Jersey Bike, branded as Jersey Bike, where you can ride your bike to Jersey City or get on a Jersey Bike to Manhattan. But once you get there, you have City Bike at your disposal, which is a completely different product. There are membership fees associated with it. So we thought the most logical way to be more efficient and more service friendly towards our population was to create this connectivity, view these borders, these city borders as really artificial. Because it takes a 10-minute bike ride to get to New York City, or even a 5-minute or less bike ride to get to Jersey City. And it allows the user to use the same product. So if you want to commute to Jersey City, you can do so with a City Bike, both to Jersey City and back. If you want to commute to New York City, you can do the same thing. And then when you get to New York City, you don't have to go on a subway and use mass transit. you can use a city bike in New York City as well. So that's why we thought, especially in the COVID-19 era, this was especially important.
And obviously, one of the components is how do you get people around safely for the moment, but make sure we still have the sustainable mass transit system we want for the future. How concerned are you that as ridership is down on a lot of these systems? I know in San Francisco, we've had major cuts to our public transit, probably less so, I'm guessing, in certainly in the Manhattan piece, but there's a real question of how do you sort of make sure that you're still building for the sustainable future you want while adjusting the realities of the moment in terms of COVID. How have you looked at that, and what do cities like Hoboken need from the federal government in order to be able to keep their mass transit systems healthy and functional for the future, even if ridership is down at the moment?
Sure. Well, Hoboken has initiated perhaps the most aggressive Vision Zero plan in the country. We have aimed for a zero number of not deaths or fatalities, but the number zero injuries that are pedestrian related or bike related by the year 2030. So the initiation of that campaign, it takes, and the success of that campaign takes some work. And what we've done is essentially created a whole system of bike lanes within Hoboken. Right now, we're at about 40% of the streets in Hoboken, streets and roads, have bike lanes. We have 3 roads that have protected bike lanes, and we are progressing more towards bike lanes that are protected bike lanes in furtherance of that initiative of reliance upon bikes as an environmentally friendly alternative to driving, and also doing so with, as you'd mentioned, help from the federal government. That's through the annual grant program that they provide, as well as the state government here in New Jersey.
And when you talk about sort of mobility options and stuff, you mentioned earlier on that Hoboken had a trial with scooters and stuff. You've seemed to focus on bikes. What did you learn from the scooter experience, and what sort of made you put more eggs in the biking basket, if you will?
Well, the scooter experience, which I personally love, was very polarizing in the sense that everyone had a strong opinion. Some people had several opinions about e-scooters. So we had a pilot program, meaning a test program for the scooters that expired, and myself and the city council said we're going to press the pause button on scooters. We're not going to totally discount them, but we're going to revisit them at a later time. Right now, we're going to focus on city bike, which includes not just traditional bikes, but also electric bikes. And then at some point in the future, we may transition or add e-bikes or e-scooters to that mix.
And we only have about 30 seconds left, but I did want to touch on one of the technologies for the future, which is autonomous vehicles, which obviously play into the safety issue that you're talking about. They also help seniors who can't drive. Where do you see autonomy fitting into this?
I was in Silicon Valley back in February. We visited a company called Zoox, Zoox. They're making an autonomous vehicle. I got to ride in one and see the technology behind it. They appear to be well advanced in that space, and it's something that we would welcome for a variety of reasons.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We could talk much longer, but we covered a lot of ground, I hope. Thank you so much, Mayor Bhalla.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So next up, we're going to have our View from the Top segment, which